Greetings, English 102 students. Sorry about the delay on getting this recap video put together, but let's talk about the multimodality materials we discussed on Tuesday. So, with the multimodality ideas, the main things we want to bear in mind is that there are modes of communication besides simply speaking or besides just what's written on a page. And so what we covered is what is considered a multimodal source and how we would apply that to our primary sources for Article 2. And so, as I mentioned on Tuesday, there are 5 multimodal modes. All right, they are the linguistic mode, the visual mode, the aural mode, aural spelled A-U-R-A-L, gestural, and spatial. And you'll notice I'm actually trying to use as many of these modes as I can during this video, given that this is a rather low-tech, just off my phone video. Alright, so the linguistic mode, anything involving words. So if you have words that are being spoken like I'm doing now, if you have words on a page, that's the linguistic mode. English courses always use the linguistic mode. That is kind of the focus of an English course, is trying to get you to use written words more effectively. Communication courses tend to focus on spoken words. Right? So the linguistic mode in academic settings is extremely important. And part of what we're doing with this week's assignment is going beyond that mode. So our next mode, the visual mode, anything you can see, it's visual. The great red shower curtain of death back here, that is the visual mode for this video. Why do I have a shower curtain behind me? Because it looks nicer than the mess of my office. I mean, let's be real. I don't want you to see how cluttered and awful this office looks. And so visually, it's more pleasing to have this, one of my, the shower curtain that I just randomly have because a family member didn't need it. Now, the aural mode, as I said, this is aural spelled A-U-R-A-L, not O-R-A-L. And that difference is important because when we're talking this aural, we're talking what you can hear. All right? Aural spelled O-A-R-O-R-A-L refers to anything spoken. Anything spoken is also going to be heard, but the aural mode we are talking about is everything that hits the ear. So not just the words we speak, but also any music that's playing, any other sounds you hear. If you're watching a movie, for example, the soundtrack, that's part of the aural mode. Any of the slapping or punching sounds you hear during a fight in an action movie, that's part of that aural mode. And one way to know that this mode is really important is bearing in mind that when they film a fight, they are generally adding these sounds in after the fact, because filming the fight, getting those visuals, you're not going to get a microphone in close enough to catch the sound of that punch. Right? So most movies today, they will film the visuals. They'll have stunt performers doing a lot of the more difficult acrobatic type movements, because the visuals of that kind of fighting, most actors aren't able to do that kind of movement. That's not. Well, I mean, there are many who do. All right, but the thing that's important to remember here, when we're talking about, if you look at movies, one of the reasons production takes so much time is because they want to get it just right. All right, and separating out the modes and filming them separately allows them to do the emphasis. All right, the gestural mode is the next one. So Anytime you're gesturing with your hands, any facial expressions, those are part of the gestural mode. If any of you have watched The Mandalorian, season 1 is amazing with the gestural mode because, Mando, he has this helmet on, and there are a number of scenes in there where, he's not moving his hands, you don't see his face, but he'll like cock his head. All right, and that little turn of the helmet and the silence that goes with it conveys his disbelief in certain situations, his doubts. A lot of emotional information can be conveyed with just one small gesture. And this is important in presentations because the ways that you use the gesturing, we are hardwired to see how people move their hands, to see how they smile or how they frown or where their eyes are pointed. One of the toughest things making these videos is that every time I look away or roll my eyes to think about things, or if I pause and I'm staring up at the ceiling, you are going to notice those things. And those things will distract you from the words I'm trying to say. All right, so that gestural mode is actually very important. Now, the fifth mode is the spatial mode. And the spatial mode is how we bring all the other modes together. Okay, so like right now when I'm gesturing back to my red shower curtain and talking about how when my grandmother moved into the nursing home, she had this extra shower curtain still in the wrapper that my parents sent me because they're like, you need a new shower curtain, because they're my parents and they worry about these things. And then it just sat in a corner for like a year or two, and then COVID struck, and then I had to start teaching over Zoom, and then I'm like, where do I get a nice background? Oh hey, I have this nice shower curtain sitting in the corner that I didn't need, but my parents felt I did. So now it's a Zoom background. And if I ever do need a new shower curtain, I'm going to have to go buy a different one. So that combination of linguistic and even me laughing, the gesturing, all of those things fall into the spatial mode. How do we bring all these different modes together? Now, again, going back to Star Wars, one of the best examples of all of these modes coming together is Darth Vader from the original series, or the original trilogy. So, Darth Vader is actually played by 3 different actors, okay, in the original, in the episodes 4, 5, and 6. All right, and it's even more actors if you factor in the newer films and the newer shows, but we're just going to focus on those first 3. So the first person, they had an actor inside the suit, all right, and he was the one who had like the tall stance, the head slightly forward, look, very intimidating, very tall. Darth Vader in the films, I think, is 6'5", very, very tall and intimidating. All right, and then they also, he's got this big helmet, got this face, has the cape. You'll notice that like there's like a little chain holding the cape together, which actually harkens back to Roman era capes. Weirdly enough, if you're looking for like the imperial motifs, but this one actor is conveying all the visuals. All right. He's also got those gestural modes, like, holding out the hand to choke people out and things like that. Now, for the aural mode, however, they had a second actor. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm forgetting the actors' names. Any rate, so the second actor had the voice, the Darth Vader voice. And the first actor was really ticked because no one told him his voice was going to be edited out of the film and replaced with James Earl Jones. That's the voice actor, James Earl Jones, very well known. Whereas the actor who's actually in the suit, I think his name was Daniel Prowse, his voice was removed without anyone telling him. So he was very, very angry about this. But the thing is that the Prowse voice is not deep. It is not intimidating. It doesn't have that menace. So George Lucas chose to find an actor, James Earl Jones, who had a deeper, more gravelly voice that when you put it in with the visuals of this person's dark helmet, creates a far more intimidating aural mode. Now, with the aural mode, there's also the sound of Vader's breathing. That, alright? Special effects artists had to go through and figure out how to create that sound. They ended up using some scuba gear to do it. But that was a new sound effect at the time. And they didn't need to do that. Darth Vader didn't need to sound like someone who's gasping for air with a machine. But by doing that, they enhance the intimidation factor. Now, when we go with that gestural mode, they needed a third actor. They needed the stunt double for Daniel Prowse. So all those times where you see Darth Vader doing the fight scenes or jumping down the staircase in Empire Strikes Back, that's a stunt double. And those fight scenes, that could be seen as gestural, could be seen as visual. And when they bring all those different aspects together, these three different actors and the different sounds and the visuals, all of that is the spatial mode. So imagine doing all those scene cuts and all the audio remixing, and this is back before they really had the kind of computer technology we have today. And so this was done manually. Alright? It was a pain to do, I'm sure. It took hours and hours and hours of work. And George Lucas essentially revolutionized the special effects industry because of his work on the Star Wars films and starting his own company to reproduce these effects for future films. That should give you a sense of just how important these modes are. Now, we also covered 3 additional modes. So the first 5 we covered, those are the academic professional modes that you will use in professional communications. These other 3 modes you would not be using in class. There are not very many places to use them in the workplace, but I do like to mention them. Alright, so the first one is touch. A handshake, a hug, all of those things are part of that mode of touch. One reason we don't see that in the workplace often is because an unwelcome touch, that is where sexual harassment comes from. And so one reason that it's important to think about these modes is that the ways we communicate with modes aren't not everyone uses modes appropriately. Right? This is one of the reasons why bullying, online bullying, someone might say, oh, how can it be bullying if it's online? You can't be intimidating, blah, blah, blah. And the fact is, though, that words can be intimidating. Choices of images, choices of, emotional distress one can cause. These communication modes are not always used well, or used in nice ways, I should say. But on the other hand, if you're meeting with family, people go in for hugs to show this is our connection, this is our emotional connection. At business meetings, reaching out for a good firm handshake can help people feel like they're being welcomed to a corporation. On the other hand, like me, I've had 2 surgeries on my right wrist, so when someone reaches out and grabs my hand in a vice and just it, I find it very painful and very irritating. So do not shake my hand like that if you like to shake hands. I like a nice firm, like a good grip that is not going to rip my hand from my wrist. So the next one would be taste. Serving food at a gathering. That is a form of communication, a form of rhetoric. Are you serving good, high-quality food that costs a lot? Or are you serving cheap stuff that tastes really bland? The example I used in class was, when Grandma bakes her apple pie, it's like amazing, and this is how you know Grandma loves you, because it tastes good. And if Grandma bakes an apple pie that doesn't have any sugar in it, then you should have sent a thank you note at Christmas. And then the third one to cover is smell. An example I forgot to mention is if you wanted someone to leave a place, you could throw like a stink bomb toss a stink bomb in a bathroom to clear it out, for example. Smell communicates things. Professionally speaking, of course, you would not use smell in communication. What are you going to do? Like, bake some chocolate chip cookies when you hand out your resume? Actually, that might help you get hired, so maybe that's not a bad idea. I don't know. But the thing to think about is that we use these different modes of communication all the time, and when you're doing your project for this week, you want to find sources that are using more than just the linguistic and visual modes. All right, so we're looking for sources that are not just like a typewritten article, or you want things that are going to also have the aural mode, or also going to have the gestural mode. So any sources that are videos are going to be perfect, because you're going to have visuals, you're going to have people. Like if someone's on the video waving their hands around, you've got those multiple modes. A podcast will work because you'll have the aural mode where you're hearing it along with that linguistic mode. Now, if there is a podcast, but you are reading the transcript from it, that is not the kind of source I want you to use. I want you to use sources where you are actually seeing, colorful things, or people, or brochures, or posters. I want you actually hearing the tone of voice. I want you interpreting the gestures and things like that. I want you able to comment on, how are they combining these different elements together. Like the Mandalorian tipping his helmet. That's gestural mode coupled with the visuals of, here's a guy in a mask. You can't see his face, but he's still expressing doubt by tipping his head a certain way. I want you looking at sources where you can comment on how these different modes are being used together. Okay, so with that, I hope our conversation on Tuesday was informative, and I hope this video offers a kind of a good recap for it. But as always, please let me know of questions. As I mentioned before, text is generally quicker than email. And with that, I will see you guys in class pretty soon.